Deep in the heart of Namibia's Brandberg mountain, hidden among the sun-baked cliffs and wind-carved boulders, lies a painting that has haunted historians and archaeologists for generations. It's called the White Lady of Brandberg, a figure so striking, so out of place in its ancient surroundings that it sparked debates, inspired wild theories, and left experts scratching their heads for over a century. At first glance, you might think this elegant, almost ethereal figure belongs in a Renaissance fresco, not on the walls of a remote African cave. But there she is, frozen in time, her identity and origins shrouded in mystery. Who painted her? Why does she look so different from the other rock art in the region? And what secrets does she hold about the people who once called this harsh, beautiful landscape home? The Brandberg mountain itself is a place of extremes, a towering massif rising abruptly from the desert, its peaks catching the first and last light of day. For thousands of years, it's been a sacred site, a canvas for the stories of the San people, whose rock art dots the region, but the White Lady doesn't quite fit. Her style is different, more fluid, more detailed, almost as if she stepped out of another world. Some say she's a shaman, mid-ritual, her body adorned with ceremonial paint. Others argue she's evidence of ancient contact with distant civilizations, a visitor from across the seas. And then there are those who believe she's not a woman at all, but a deity, a spirit, or even a representation of something far older and more mysterious than we can imagine. What makes this painting so captivating isn't just its beauty or its age. It's the way it defies easy explanation. Every theory unravels another thread, leading to more questions than answers. Was the artist a lone traveler, a member of a forgotten culture, or someone whose story we'll never fully know? As we explore the enigma of the White Lady, we're not just piecing together clues about her origins. We're stepping into a larger mystery about human creativity, connection, and the enduring power of art to transcend time. This isn't just a story about a painting, it's a journey into the unknown, where every detail holds the potential to rewrite history. So let's begin where the mystery does, with a single figure painted on stone waiting to be understood. It was the year 1918 when German explorer Reinhard Maack first laid eyes on the White Lady. Trekking through the rugged Tsisab Ravine, a narrow gorge slicing through Brandberg Mountain's northern foothills, he was mapping the region's geology when he stumbled upon the cave. The entrance was unassuming, just another shadow in the rock face, but inside, the walls whispered with ancient artistry. Among the thousands of rock paintings in the area, mostly depictions of animals, hunters, and geometric patterns, one figure stopped him in his tracks. There she was, painted in ochre and white, her posture poised, her limbs adorned with what looked like bracelets or ritual markings. Maack later wrote that he felt a jolt of disbelief. This wasn't just another San artwork, it was something entirely different, almost out of place. He spent days carefully sketching the painting, trying to capture every delicate line and curve. His drawings, which survive to this day, show a figure that seems to float between worlds, part human, part something else. The elongated limbs, the graceful stance, the intricate details of her adornments, none of it matched the simpler, more symbolic style of the surrounding San art. Maack's initial theory, he thought she might be a Mediterranean traveler, perhaps a Phoenician or even a Greek woman who'd somehow made her way into the heart of Africa centuries ago. It was a bold idea, one that sparked controversy. How could a figure so reminiscent of European classical art end up in a Namibian cave? But the deeper mystery wasn't just her appearance, it was her isolation. The White Lady wasn't part of a larger scene or narrative. She stood alone, as if the artist wanted her to be seen but not fully understood. The cave itself was remote, difficult to access, suggesting this wasn't casual graffiti but something intentional, maybe even sacred. Maack's sketches and notes spread among European scholars, fueling debates. Was she a deity, a visitor from afar, or did local artists develop this style independently, a fleeting moment of artistic innovation lost to time? The questions piled up, but one thing was clear: this wasn't just another rock painting. The White Lady was a riddle wrapped in pigment, waiting for someone to unravel her story. And yet, even as Maack's discovery drew attention, it raised more questions than answers. The Brandberg was already known for its rich rock art, but nothing like this had ever been documented. Was she proof of ancient transcontinental contact, or simply a testament to the boundless creativity of the people who once lived here? The debate was just beginning. The White Lady herself is a vision that stops you in your tracks, not just because of her striking presence, but because she defies every expectation. Unlike the thousands of other rock paintings in Brandberg, which typically feature bold red ochre figures in dynamic hunting scenes or stylized animal forms, this figure is rendered in delicate white pigment, her form almost glowing against the cave wall. She stands tall and slender, with elongated limbs that suggest movement or ritual, her body adorned with intricate markings that resemble bracelets, anklets, and a strange sash-like belt. Her face is ambiguous, some say feminine, others argue the features lean toward androgynous, adding another layer of mystery. But what truly sets her apart are the details: a headpiece that flares outward like a crown or symbolic rays, and what appears to be a feathered or tasseled accessory dangling from one arm. If you didn't know better, you might think you were looking at a fresco from ancient Egypt or Crete rather than a rock shelter in southern Africa. The contrast with the surrounding sand art couldn't be sharper. Traditional sand paintings in the region are masterpieces of symbolism, bold, rhythmic, and deeply connected to the spiritual world of the hunter-gatherers who created them. They depict eland antelope with exaggerated curves, human figures with exaggerated features for ritual emphasis, and scenes that pulse with movement and meaning. But the White Lady, she's stillness and precision. Where sand art often feels like a burst of collective memory, she seems like a portrait, singular, deliberate, almost private. Even her pigment is unusual. While most local artworks rely on iron-rich reds and browns, her white hue suggests the use of kaolin clay or ash, materials that would have been carefully selected for their rarity or symbolic weight. Then there's the posture. She's not running, dancing, or hunting like the figures around her. One arm is raised, bent at the elbow as if holding an object, some say a bow, others a ceremonial staff, while the other hangs loosely, adorned with those enigmatic stripes. Her legs are slightly parted, poised mid-step, giving the eerie impression that she's walking out of the rock itself. It's this lifelike quality that makes her so mesmerizing. The sand artists were brilliant at capturing the essence of their subjects with minimal lines, but the White Lady's creator went further, adding shading and detail that suggest a familiarity with more complex artistic traditions. And that's the heart of the puzzle. Everything about her feels intentional, from the choice of color to the foreign-looking adornments. The sash across her waist, for instance, echoes the girdles worn by Minoan or Egyptian figures, while the headpiece has drawn comparisons to the solar crowns of Mediterranean deities. But here's the twist. Brandberg is thousands of miles from the Mediterranean, with no clear evidence of direct contact between these cultures. So did the artist see a traveler from afar and immortalize them? Or is this a case of parallel imagination, a local vision that just happens to mirror distant styles? The more you study her, the more she seems to exist in a category of her own, a fleeting moment where one artist's hand reached across time and left us something we still can't fully decipher. The theory that the White Lady might have Mediterranean origins took center stage in the 1950s, thanks to the work of Abbé Henry Breuil, a French priest and archaeologist with a reputation for bold interpretations. After studying Reinhard Maack's sketches and visiting the Brandberg site himself, Breuil became convinced the painting wasn't African at all. It was the work of a visitor from across the sea. He pointed to the figure's headdress, which he compared to the radiant crowns of Egyptian deities like Hathor, and the sash-like belt reminiscent of garb worn by Minoan or Phoenician figures. Even the posture, with one arm raised as if holding an object, reminded him of ceremonial poses in ancient Mediterranean art. To Breuil, these weren't coincidences, they were clues. His conclusion, the White Lady was likely a depiction of a foreign dignitary, perhaps even a priestess or noblewoman who traveled to Namibia as part of an ancient trade network. The idea wasn't entirely far-fetched. By the mid-20th century, archaeologists were uncovering evidence of long-distance trade routes that stretched across continents. Egyptian artifacts had been found as far north as the British Isles, and Phoenician ships were known to have sailed beyond the Mediterranean. If these cultures could reach Europe, why not Africa's southwestern coast? Breuil argued that the White Lady's cave might have been a stopping point for seafaring traders, a place where a visiting artist left behind a trace of their homeland. His theory captured imaginations, suggesting a world far more interconnected in antiquity than previously believed. But not everyone was convinced. Critics quickly noted the gaps in Breuil's logic. For one, there was no physical evidence, no Egyptian or Phoenician artifacts anywhere near Brandberg to support the idea of sustained contact. The closest known Mediterranean trade networks ended thousands of miles to the north, in places like Carthage or the Nile Delta. Even if a lone traveler had made the journey, why would they stop here in this remote mountain range to leave a single painting, and why would their style appear nowhere else in the region? The stylistic comparisons also had problems. While the White Lady's headdress might resemble Egyptian solar discs, similar motifs appear in San art too, symbols of spiritual power, not necessarily foreign influence. The so-called sash could just as easily be a local beaded belt, and the raised arm posture is common in San shamanic depictions where dancers enter trance states. Breuil's interpretation relied on seeing the painting through a European lens, projecting familiar imagery onto a culture he knew less about. Later researchers pointed out that his theory ignored the creativity of African artists, implying they couldn't have developed such sophistication independently. Yet the debate didn't end there. Even as the Egyptian connection lost favor, it left behind an intriguing question: why does the White Lady feel so different? Whether or not she came from across the sea, her presence challenges assumptions about how art evolves, how cultures interact, and what happens when one artist's vision doesn't fit the mold. Breuil's theory might have been flawed, but it forced scholars to look closer not just at the painting, but at the biases shaping their interpretations. After all, mysteries like this aren't just about solving puzzles. They're about questioning how we see the past and who we assume was part of its story. To understand why the White Lady stands out so dramatically, we first need to step into the world of the San people, the original storytellers of this landscape. For thousands of years, the San, often called Bushmen, have painted the rocks of southern Africa with scenes that pulse with life and meaning. Their art isn't just decoration, it's a visual language, a way of capturing the rhythm of existence in a harsh but beautiful world. Most San paintings feature animals, the elegant curve of an eland's horns, the muscular leap of a springbok, rendered in bold red ochre with a few masterful strokes. These aren't just hunting records, they're spiritual portraits honoring the creatures that sustained life and symbolize the connection between the physical and spirit worlds. Human figures appear too, but they're often stylized with elongated limbs or exaggerated features that suggest movement or ritual transformation. Many of these scenes depict shamans in trance, their bodies bending as they dance between realms, sometimes half human, half animal, embodying the fluid boundary between the everyday and the sacred. Against this backdrop, the White Lady isn't just different, she's almost disruptive. Where San art thrives on symbolism and collective motifs, she's strikingly individual. Where their figures are dynamic, captured mid-motion, she's poised and intentional, as if frozen in a private moment. Even her color sets her apart. San artists overwhelmingly used red ochre mixed with fat or blood to paint their visions. The White Lady's pale pigment, possibly kaolin clay, would have been a deliberate choice, something rare, perhaps reserved for special meanings. Her adornments don't match the typical beadwork or animal skin patterns seen in other San figures, and her posture lacks the rhythmic energy of dance or hunting. It's this very contrast that makes her so perplexing. If she's a shaman, why doesn't she resemble the other trance dancers? If she's a hunter, where's her bow or the game she's pursuing? One possibility is that she represents something outside the usual San artistic vocabulary, a unique ritual, a forgotten myth, or even an encounter with outsiders. Some scholars suggest she could be a rainmaker, a figure of particular power in this arid land, her white pigment symbolizing water or clouds. Others propose she's a spirit guide, her alien appearance meant to signal her otherworldly nature. But here's the twist: the San themselves don't have oral traditions about her. Unlike other rock art, which elders can often interpret through stories passed down generations, the White Lady's meaning seems lost, even to the descendants of those who might have painted her. That absence raises tantalizing questions. Was she the work of a lone San artist experimenting with a new style? Could she be evidence of a lost subgroup with distinct traditions? Or does her isolation hint at something even more intriguing, a moment of cultural crossover where the San encountered ideas or people that left a fleeting mark on their art? The answers might lie in the details we've overlooked. For instance, recent studies note faint traces of red pigment around her, suggesting she wasn't always alone on that rock face. Time may have erased companions or context, leaving her stranded in silence. What's clear is this: the White Lady challenges the idea that San art was monolithic. She reminds us that ancient cultures weren't static, they shifted, borrowed, and innovated. Maybe she's not an outlier but a clue, a glimpse into a chapter of San history we're only beginning to read. After all, the most enduring mysteries aren't just about what we see, they're about what we've yet to understand. The age of the White Lady is as much a riddle as her identity. Dating techniques have placed her anywhere between 2,000 and 20,000 years old, an astonishing range that only deepens her mystery. Carbon dating of organic materials in the cave, like remnants of paint binders or charcoal from ancient fires, has yielded frustratingly inconsistent results. Some samples hint at a relatively recent origin, aligning with the last few thousand years when San hunter-gatherers were known to be active in the region. Others suggest she could be far older, possibly dating back to a time when the climate was wetter and the landscape unrecognizable from today's desert. Then there's the patina, the thin, natural layer of mineral deposits that forms over rock art over centuries. Experts have studied how sunlight, humidity, and the chemistry of the rock itself have altered the surface around the White Lady, comparing it to other dated paintings in the area. But here, too, the answers are murky. Some analyses suggest her pigments are older than the surrounding artworks, while others argue the patina's growth rate in this particular cave might have been affected by microclimates or water seepage, throwing off estimates. The debate isn't just academic, it changes how we interpret her entirely. If she's on the younger end of the spectrum, she might be a rare glimpse of San artistic evolution, a late flourish of creativity before outside cultures arrived. But if she's truly ancient, she could rewrite what we know about early human expression in southern Africa, proof that sophisticated, individualistic art existed long before we thought possible. And that's the heart of the problem. Without a definitive date, every theory about her remains suspended in uncertainty. Is she a relic of a lost civilization, a traveler's ephemeral mark, or a local artist's fleeting experiment? The longer the dating disputes continue, the more she becomes a mirror, reflecting our own limitations in unraveling the past. every attempt to pin her down only reminds us how much we still don't know. One of the most compelling modern interpretations of the White Lady strips away the exoticism of Mediterranean travelers and instead roots her firmly in the spiritual world of the San people. Look closely at her raised arm, the subtle bend of her knees. This isn't just posture, it's movement frozen in time. Many scholars now argue she's not a foreign dignitary at all, but a shaman mid-ritual, her body captured in the throes of a trance. The San have long used dance and rhythmic movement to cross into the spirit realm, and the White Lady's pose mirrors descriptions of these ecstatic states where the body becomes a vessel for transformation. Her white pigment takes on new meaning here, not as a stylistic choice but as a visual metaphor for spiritual purity or otherworldly connection. In San cosmology, color carries deep symbolism. Red ochre, used in most rock art, represents life, blood, and the earthly realm. White, by contrast, might signal the intangible, ancestors, spirits, or the liminal space between worlds. Then there are her adornments, those intricate stripes on her limbs. They could represent ritual scarification or body paint applied specifically for ceremonies, marking her as someone set apart. The sash-like belt might not be fabric at all, but strands of animal sinew or beads worn by healers during sacred dances. Even her headpiece, once thought to resemble Egyptian crowns, finds parallels in San traditions, feathered headdresses or straw bundles worn by shamans to channel energy. What's remarkable is how these details align with first-hand accounts of San rituals recorded by anthropologists. In trance dances, participants describe feeling their bodies grow lighter, as if filling with light, a sensation mirrored in the White Lady's luminous pigment. The artist may have been depicting not just a person but an experience, the moment when the physical self dissolves into something greater. But why does she stand alone? Unlike typical San rock art, which often shows communal dances or hunting parties, the White Lady's isolation could be intentional. Shamans frequently undertook solitary vision quests, retreating to caves or high places to seek guidance. Her cave, tucked away in the Brandberg's folds, might have been one such sacred space, a private canvas for a profoundly personal journey. The absence of other figures could mean she wasn't just any shaman, but perhaps a revered ancestral spirit, painted as a conduit between the living and the dead. Modern researchers using digital enhancement have uncovered faint traces of red pigment around her, suggesting she wasn't always the sole focus. Time may have faded companions, spirit guides, animals, or fellow dancers, leaving her to bear the weight of interpretation. This discovery adds nuance to the shamanic theory. Perhaps she wasn't alone, but central to a larger narrative now lost to erosion. The debate continues, but what emerges is a figure deeply connected to San spirituality, yet still enigmatic enough to remind us that understanding the past requires both science and humility. The White Lady doesn't give up her secrets easily. She invites us to look closer, to question our assumptions, and to recognize that sometimes the most powerful mysteries aren't about distant lands, but the uncharted territories of human belief. Even the White Lady's gender isn't as clear-cut as her name suggests. Look closely at the figure's features. The slender waist and what appears to be a sash across the hips initially read as feminine to early observers like Reinhard Maack. But ethnographer Harold Pager, who documented thousands of Brandberg paintings in the 1970s, challenged this assumption. He noted the lack of clear breasts, the angular shoulders, and the ambiguity of the facial features, arguing the figure could just as easily be male. The so-called sash might instead be a hunter's belt, and the raised arm posture mirrors known San depictions of male shamans holding bows or ritual objects. This debate isn't just about anatomy. It forces us to question how our own cultural lenses shape what we see in ancient art. The San worldview complicates the binary interpretation further. In their cosmology, shamans often transcended gender during trance states, embodying both masculine and feminine energies to mediate between worlds. Some rock art in the region explicitly portrays androgynous figures with blended characteristics, suggesting gender fluidity held spiritual significance. If the White Lady represents a shaman mid-ritual, the artist may have intentionally obscured gender cues to emphasize this liminal state. The white pigment itself could signal this transformation, not just a color choice, but a visual metaphor for the dissolution of earthly identity. Page's meticulous tracings revealed another clue often overlooked: faint lines near the figure's waist that might represent a loincloth, a garment typically worn by San men. Yet the delicate anklets and bracelets seem more aligned with adornments San women wore. This mix of traits has led some researchers to propose the figure isn't human at all, but a deity or ancestral spirit meant to exist beyond gender. After all, the San didn't separate art from spirituality. Every stroke carried meaning. What reads to us as ambiguity might have been intentional symbolism, a way to depict a being untethered from physical form. Modern digital imaging hasn't settled the debate. Enhanced photos show eroded areas where gender markers might have once been clearer, leaving us with an incomplete picture. The controversy underscores a larger truth about interpreting ancient art. Without the artist's voice, we're left projecting our own frameworks onto the past. Whether the White Lady is a woman, a man, or something more transcendent, the real revelation might be how powerfully a single figure can expose the limits of our understanding. Every theory tells us as much about ourselves as it does about the painting. Could the White Lady have been painted not by a San artist, but by a stranded European traveler lost in the wilderness of ancient Namibia? This audacious theory resurfaces every few decades, fueled by the painting's uncanny resemblance to classical Mediterranean art and the faint possibility of pre-colonial transatlantic contact. Proponents point to the pigments used, the white kaolin clay, and the precise application which some argue align more closely with European fresco techniques than the mineral-based paints typical of San artists. Advanced spectral analysis reveals subtle layering in the brushstrokes, a method seen in Cretan or Egyptian murals, where colors were built up in thin glazes rather than applied in the bold, single-layer strokes common to San rock art. Even the way light and shadow suggest depth in the figure's limbs feels foreign to the region's artistic traditions, hinting at a hand trained in very different practices. Then there's the tantalizing but controversial question of how a European could have reached Brandberg in antiquity. Maritime historians note that Phoenician sailors, renowned for their daring voyages, circumnavigated Africa as early as 600 BCE, as recorded by Herodotus. Could one of their ships have been blown off course, its survivors trekking inland? Or perhaps a Greek or Roman vessel, venturing too far south along Africa's west coast, met a similar fate? The Bengla Current, which sweeps northward along Namibia's shore, might have carried distressed ships into these waters. While no physical evidence of such wrecks exists near Brandberg, the absence doesn't rule out the possibility. Wood decomposes, metals corrode, and the shifting dunes could have swallowed any traces over millennia. But the theory crumbles under scrutiny when placed against the broader context of San creativity. The White Lady's foreign elements, her headdress, her sash, have parallels in San artifacts uncovered in archaeological digs. Beaded belts nearly identical to the one she wears have been found in excavations of ancient San sites, and her so-called solar crown mirrors the feather headdresses worn by Kalahari shamans during rainmaking ceremonies. Even the pigment argument falters. Kaolin clay, while rare in San art, wasn't unknown. It was reserved for special rituals, its whiteness symbolizing ancestral spirits or sacred water. The layered brushstrokes could simply reflect an artist of exceptional skill, not an outsider. The most damning counterpoint lies in the timeline. If the White Lady is indeed 20,000 years old, as some dating suggests, the notion of a Mediterranean artist becomes impossible. Those civilizations didn't exist yet. Even the youngest estimates place her creation long before Phoenician ships sailed. but the hypothesis endures because it speaks to a deeper bias, the reluctance to credit African cultures with innovation outside familiar frameworks. The White Lady doesn't need a European explanation to be remarkable. She could just as easily be proof of the Sands' artistic versatility, a testament to the untold diversity of their expressions lost to time. Yet the idea of a lone, shipwrecked painter lingers not as science but as myth. There's something haunting about imagining an unknown artist far from home, leaving their mark on a cave wall before vanishing into the desert. It transforms the White Lady from a historical puzzle into a human story, blurring the line between fact and legend. Whether true or not, the theory reminds us that great art has always traveled, crossing borders long before maps could chart them. Maybe that's why the painting captivates us, not because she fits neatly into any one culture's narrative, but because she refuses to. Among the most tantalizing and contentious interpretations of the White Lady are the fringe theories that connect her to legendary lost civilizations or even extraterrestrial influences. These ideas push beyond conventional archaeology, suggesting her sophisticated style and anomalous details might be remnants of an advanced ancient culture, perhaps even the mythical Atlantis. Proponents of this view highlight the precision of her proportions, which some argue display a knowledge of human anatomy and artistic techniques that hunter-gatherer societies supposedly couldn't have mastered alone. The flowing lines of her limbs, the symmetry of her adornments, could these be signs of a forgotten civilization's hand, one that left traces in remote places like Brandberg before vanishing into obscurity? Atlantis, first mentioned by Plato as an island empire lost to the sea, has long been a magnet for speculation. Some theorists propose that Atlantean survivors, fleeing their sinking homeland, dispersed across the globe, bringing their knowledge and artistry to distant shores. In this narrative, the White Lady becomes a fragment of their legacy, an artistic fingerprint left by travelers who sought refuge in Africa's mountains. Similarities to Minoan and Egyptian art are cited as evidence, with claims that these cultures themselves inherited techniques from a much older, shared precursor. The White Lady's headdress, resembling solar symbolism found in multiple ancient societies, is framed not as coincidence but as proof of a once unified global high culture. Yet the Atlantis theory collapses under the weight of its own assumptions. No archaeological evidence places Atlanteans or any advanced prehistoric civilization in southern Africa. The Brandberg region shows no signs of the infrastructure, tools, or settlements that would accompany such a society. Even the artistic argument falters when examined closely. While the White Lady's style is unique, it doesn't require an Atlantean explanation. Human creativity is boundless and innovation can emerge in isolation. The San people, far from being primitive in their artistry, had millennia to refine their techniques. To credit an outside force is to underestimate their ingenuity. More extreme still are the claims linking the White Lady to extraterrestrial visitors. A handful of researchers, often operating outside mainstream academia, point to her otherworldly appearance, the elongated limbs, the radiant headpiece, as potential evidence of alien contact. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest she might depict a celestial being, a teacher from the stars who shared knowledge with early humans. The cave itself, they argue, could have been a sacred site where such encounters occurred, with the painting serving as a record of the event. These ideas thrive on the mystery surrounding her, filling gaps in understanding with speculative leaps, but the counter-arguments are decisive. The White Lady's alien features align perfectly with known San artistic conventions when viewed in context. Elongated limbs are common in San depictions of shamans, symbolizing spiritual elongation during trance states. Her headdress mirrors ritual attire still used by Kalahari healers today. Even the choice of white pigment, often cited as unnatural, has practical and symbolic roots. Kaolin clay was locally available and held sacred significance. The alien theory, like the Atlantis narrative, often reflects a bias that indigenous cultures couldn't produce sophisticated art without outside intervention. What these fringe ideas reveal, though, isn't just about the White Lady, it's about us. The urge to connect her to Atlantis or extraterrestrials speaks to a deeper human desire for romance in history, for lost worlds and cosmic connections. She becomes a canvas for our myths, reflecting back the stories we want to believe. Yet the truth may be even more remarkable, a testament to the sand's unbroken artistic lineage, capable of producing masterpieces that still stir wonder millennia later. Whether shaman, spirit, or simply a vision from an artist's mind, the White Lady needs no lost civilization to justify her power. She stands as a mystery, yes, but perhaps one whose answer lies not in the stars, but in the very human hands that painted her. For generations, the Brandberg mountain has been more than just a geological wonder to the local Damara and Hero people. It's a living tapestry of stories, where every rock and ravine whispers with spiritual significance. Among these tales, the White Lady occupies a singular space, woven into oral traditions that predate Reinhard Maack's discovery by centuries. One Damara legend speaks of a luminous spirit known as the Queen of the Mountain, a being who emerges during the dry season to lead lost travelers to hidden springs. Her description, pale, adorned with gleaming ornaments and radiant against the stone, mirrors the painting's eerie presence. Elders say she's a guardian, a bridge between the physical world and the realm of ancestors, her white pigment symbolizing not just water's life-giving power but the veil between worlds. Among the Hero, another version persists. The White Lady is the restless soul of a healer who once took refuge in the caves during a time of war. Betrayed by her own people, she vanished into the rock, leaving behind her image as both warning and blessing. To approach her without humility, the story goes, invites misfortune, acclaims some attribute to the accidental deaths of early 20th century explorers who tried to remove pigment samples. These narratives, though varied, share a common thread. The figure isn't just art, she's a presence, a being with agency. Academic researchers, however, approach these legends with cautious skepticism. While acknowledging their cultural importance, they note the lack of direct oral histories linking the Damara or Hero to the painting's creation. The San, the likelier artists, left no recorded tales about her, a gap that some attribute to colonial disruptions erasing indigenous knowledge. Archaeologist Dr. Tilman Lenson-Ers, who's documented over 1,000 Brandberg paintings, argues that local legends may have retrofitted the figure into existing folklore after her discovery by outsiders. The White Lady's isolation makes her a blank slate, inviting reinterpretation across generations. Yet the divide between legend and academia isn't as stark as it seems. Modern scholars like anthropologist Megan Biesel, who worked closely with San communities, suggest that the painting's spiritual resonance aligns with broader San beliefs even if her specific story is lost. In San cosmology, caves are portals to the spirit world, and white often represents the numinous. The White Lady's pose mirrors trance dancing figures in other San art, supporting the idea that she's not an outlier but part of a continuum of belief. What emerges is a dialogue between memory and evidence. The Damara and Hero stories, though perhaps not literal explanations, offer something science alone cannot, a sense of the sacred that clings to Brandberg's cliffs. Meanwhile, archaeological analysis peels back layers of pigment and time, seeking the artist's hand. The truth may lie somewhere in between, not just in who painted her, but in why she still captivates us. After all, the greatest mysteries aren't just puzzles to solve, they're mirrors reflecting what we choose to see in them. Time has not been kind to the White Lady of Brandberg. Exposed to the elements in her shallow rock shelter, the delicate pigments that have survived millennia now face their greatest threats in the modern era. Namibia's harsh climate swings between scorching daytime heat and freezing desert nights, causing the rock face to expand and contract microscopically, a relentless cycle that slowly flakes away fragments of the painting. Wind-blown sand acts like natural sandpaper, scouring the surface over decades, while rare but torrential rains send water cascading down the cave walls, carrying away precious particles of ochre and kaolin. Even the humidity from visitors' breath, condensed on the rock in cooler months, contributes to the gradual erosion. Scientists using high-resolution imaging have documented alarming changes just since the 1990s. Faint details in the headdress now vanished, once crisp lines blurred into ghostly impressions. Human activity poses even more immediate dangers. Though protected as part of the Brandberg National Heritage Site, the cave remains accessible to anyone willing to hike the rugged Tsisab Ravine. Some visitors, ignoring barriers, touch the painting to feel a connection to the ancient artist, leaving oils from their skin that accelerate pigment decay. Others carve initials nearby or attempt rubbings, unaware that even gentle pressure damages the porous stone. In 2008, a German tourist was caught trying to enhance the White Lady with modern paint, believing he could restore her faded glory. The botched intervention required painstaking removal by conservators using cotton swabs and enzymatic cleaners, a process that risked harming the original artwork beneath. These threats have sparked fierce debate among archaeologists, conservators, and local communities about how best to protect her. Some argue for physical barriers, a glass case or climate-controlled enclosure like those safeguarding France's Lascaux cave paintings. But opponents counter that sealing the site would sever the living connection between the artwork and the landscape that inspired it. The Damara and Hiro peoples, in particular, emphasize that the White Lady's power derives from her presence in the open air, where she remains part of the mountain's spiritual ecology. Digital documentation offers a partial solution. Teams from the University of Cologne have created a millimeter-accurate 3D scan of the entire cave, ensuring the painting could be reconstructed if lost. Yet, as conservator Dr. Leon Jacobson notes, a scan is a shadow. It preserves data, not essence. The compromise currently in place, a low railing, trained guides monitoring visits, and strict humidity controls during peak tourism seasons reflects the delicate balance between preservation and access. But with visitor numbers rising yearly, the question remains, can the White Lady survive humanity's fascination with her? Perhaps the greatest irony is that the very mystery that makes her precious also puts her at risk. Every theory, every pilgrimage to her remote cave brings us closer to the day when this enigmatic figure might exist only in photographs and legends, a fate that would make her at last truly untouchable. Modern technology has given us new eyes to see the White Lady, not just as a static image, but as a living artifact with layers of untold stories. Advanced three-dimensional scanning has revolutionized our understanding of her creation. Researchers from the University of Cologne deployed laser scanners to map every microscopic ridge and groove of the cave wall, creating a digital replica so precise it reveals brushstrokes invisible to the naked eye. These scans show something startling. The artist didn't paint her in one sitting. The strokes overlap in delicate layers, suggesting multiple sessions, perhaps days or even weeks apart. The faintest lines, buried beneath the visible surface, hint at earlier drafts or corrections, like a sculptor refining clay. One particularly revealing detail emerges from the shadows, traces of a second figure, long since faded, standing beside her. This ghostly companion, detectable only through algorithmic enhancement, raises fresh questions. Was the White Lady part of a scene, a narrative lost to time? Spectral imaging takes us even deeper. By bombarding the painting with different wavelengths of light, from ultraviolet to infrared, scientists can identify pigments at a molecular level without touching the fragile surface. What appears as uniform white to our eyes is actually a masterful blend of kaolin clay, crushed quartz, and a binding agent likely made from plant sap or animal fat. The infrared scans uncovered something even more surprising. Beneath her feet lie faint geometric patterns, possibly a symbolic ground line or ritual boundary. painted in a red ochre now nearly invisible. This hidden framework suggests the artist worked with intentional composition, placing her within a structured space rather than at random. But perhaps the most groundbreaking tool is hyperspectral imaging, which analyzes hundreds of light frequencies simultaneously. This technique detected organic residues mixed with the pigment's tiny traces of pollen and charcoal that act like a chemical timestamp. Pollen from the surrounding Brandberg flora pins her creation to the end of the rainy season when desert plants bloom. The charcoal, radiocarbon dated to around 3,000 years old, doesn't necessarily confirm her age. It could be from torches used by later visitors, but it provides a tantalizing clue. These technologies don't just reveal how she was made, they're rewriting what we know about San artistic practices. The precision of her outlines, achieved with what appears to be a multi-hair brush, possibly made from bat whiskers or fine plant fibers, challenges assumptions about primitive tools. Microscopic imaging even shows where the artist's hand might have paused, leaving a barely perceptible drip in the pigment, a moment of humanity frozen alongside the masterpiece. Yet for all their power, these tools come with limitations. Scans can't tell us why the artist chose this cave or what emotions fueled their work. They can't decipher whether the White Lady was meant to be seen by many or just a few. What technology gives us in detail, it subtracts in mystery, reducing a spiritual act to vectors and wavelengths. But in that tension lies a new kind of magic. The more we uncover, the more we realize how much remains unseen. Every pixel of data peels back one layer only to expose another riddle, proving that even under the glare of science, the White Lady still keeps her secrets. When we step back and compare the White Lady to other ancient rock art around the world, her uniqueness becomes even more striking. Take Australia's Wandjina figures, for example, spirits painted by the Kimberley people thousands of years ago. Like the White Lady, they're often depicted with radiant headdresses and elongated forms, but there's a crucial difference. Wandjina lack facial features entirely, their eyes and mouths absorbed into a smooth, otherworldly visage, emphasizing their role as rain-bringing sky beings. The White Lady, by contrast, has discernible features: a nose, a hint of a mouth, blending the human with the divine in a way that feels intimate rather than abstract. Both figures use white pigment, but where Wandjina glow with a flat, uniform brightness, the lady's artist applied layers of clay to create depth, almost sculpting her into the rock. Crossing continents to Europe's Paleolithic caves, the contrast deepens. The bison and horses of Lascaux and Chauvet explode with motion, their legs stretched mid-gallop, their curves echoing the natural contours of the cave walls. These animals are raw energy captured in red ochre and charcoal, their power undeniable. The White Lady shares none of this dynamism. She's stillness incarnate, a single figure poised between movement and restraint, her details meticulous where European art thrives on bold simplicity. Even the famous sorcerer of Les Trois Frères, a part human, part animal figure, feels wild and untamed compared to her composed elegance. Then there's the Sahara's Tassili Enager, where rock art spans millennia, evolving from wild game to herdsmen driving cattle. Some Tassili figures wear elaborate headdresses resembling the White Lady's, but their bodies are flat silhouettes lacking her subtle shading. Most telling is their context. These Saharan paintings are crowded with life hunters, dancers, animals telling stories of survival and community. The White Lady's solitude is jarring by comparison. Why paint one figure alone in a cave when other ancient artists filled every inch with narrative? The answer might lie in purpose. European cave art often sits deep in pitch-black chambers, suggesting ritual spaces meant for few. The White Lady's cave, though secluded, is accessible, visible in daylight as if meant to be seen. Australian Wandjina were repainted over generations to renew their power. The lady shows no signs of retouching, a single artistic statement frozen in time. Even the Sahara's bustling scenes reflect daily life, while she seems to exist outside it, a bridge between worlds rather than a record of one. Perhaps her greatest anomaly isn't her style, but her silence. Most ancient art speaks a visual language shared across regions, hunting magic, shamanic journeys, celestial maps. The White Lady refuses translation. She's neither clearly sacred nor secular, neither fully human nor spirit. In a global tapestry of rock art shouting with communal meaning, she's a whisper. One artist's vision so personal, so singular that it transcends comparison. And that's what makes her unforgettable. Could the White Lady's dreamlike quality be more than artistic choice? Could it be a vision from an altered state of consciousness? The San people's spiritual practices were deeply intertwined with trance dances, where healers consumed psychoactive plants to cross into the spirit world. Archaeologists have found traces of hallucinogenic substances like the Nara melon and devil's claw in ancient San sites, plants still used by Kalahari shamans today for their mind-expanding properties. When you examine the White Lady's elongated limbs and floating posture, they mirror descriptions of trance experiences recorded by anthropologists, where dancers report feeling their bodies stretch toward the sky or dissolve into light. Her fingers, tapered like tendrils, resemble the vibrating filaments shamans describe seeing during visions, and the white pigment could symbolize the luminous haze of waking dreams. But the connection goes deeper than style. Recent chemical analysis of the cave floor uncovered microscopic residues of plants containing mesembrine, a compound with potent psychoactive effects. Found near the painting's base, these traces suggest rituals may have occurred here, with participants ingesting substances to commune with the spirit world. The White Lady's isolation takes on new meaning. She might not be a person at all, but a manifestation of the artist's vision, painted as the cave walls themselves seem to breathe and twist. Some researchers even propose her sash-like belt represents the ropes to the sky shamans describe gripping during out-of-body journeys, yet skeptics counter that not all trance art features such realism. Most San rock paintings of spiritual visions are abstract zigzagging lines for energy, or hybrid creatures merging human and animal traits. The White Lady's precise details, the individual bracelets, the delicate headpiece hint at a sober hand, not the erratic strokes of someone mid-trance. Could she instead depict a shaman post-ritual, capturing the memory of a vision once the effects faded? Or perhaps the artist was conveying not their own hallucination, but a spirit being perceived by multiple witnesses, a shared apparition made permanent on stone. The debate reveals a fascinating tension between art and altered states. Even if entheogens played a role, they were just one thread in a larger tapestry of belief. The White Lady's power lies in her ambiguity. She could be a chemical-fueled vision, a meticulous rendering of spiritual encounter, or both. In the end, what matters isn't whether the artist was under the influence, but that they channeled something extraordinary onto the rock, a moment where the unseen world brushed against the visible, leaving a mark we're still trying to decipher. The White Lady's allure hasn't just captivated scholars, it's turned a remote Namibian cave into an unlikely pilgrimage site. By the 1960s, word of Maack's discovery had spread globally, drawing the first intrepid tourists to Brandberg's rocky slopes. What began as a trickle of adventurous backpackers evolved into a steady stream after Namibia's independence in 1990, when the government recognized the site's potential to boost local economies. Today, guided hikes to the cave support dozens of Damara and Hero families who serve as expert trackers, sharing ancestral knowledge of the mountain's hidden routes. For these communities, tourism dollars have brought tangible benefits: school fees paid, medical bills covered, and a renewed pride in preserving their heritage. The White Lady has become more than a painting. She's a silent partner in sustaining the very people who have safeguarded her mountain for centuries, but popularity comes at a cost. With visitor numbers swelling past 10,000 annually, the cave's delicate microclimate has shifted. the once dry shelter now traps moisture from breath and sweat, accelerating pigment decay. Faded footprints in the surrounding soil reveal where tourists inch too close despite barriers, while Instagram hashtags boasting #White Lady underscore a darker trend, the commodification of sacred space. Some local guides, under pressure to deliver authentic experiences, embellish legends with fabricated details, turning spiritual history into entertainment. The irony is stark. The same curiosity that funds preservation also threatens to erase the authenticity visitors come to witness. Ethical tensions ripple beyond conservation. International tour companies dominate bookings, siphoning profits away from community-run operations. A single luxury safari outfit charges clients $2,000 per person for exclusive access, while Damara-led tours earn a fraction of that. Archaeologist Dr. Sven Uzman recounts a disturbing trend. Souvenir vendors near the site selling mass-produced replicas of the White Lady painted on driftwood, stripped of her cultural context. She's becoming a logo, he warns, not a legacy. Even well-intentioned efforts like UNESCO's tentative World Heritage status listing risk reducing her to a checklist item, another box ticked on a tourist's itinerary rather than a living piece of human history. Yet amidst these challenges, glimmers of hope emerge. A coalition of San elders, archaeologists, and Namibian tourism officials recently launched the Brandberg Living Museum, a visitor center where digital projections of the White Lady allow guests to experience her without entering the fragile cave. Proceeds fund both conservation and scholarships for Damara youth to train as heritage specialists. Meanwhile, stricter permit systems limit daily visitors, and motion-activated cameras deter vandalism. The balance is precarious, but the lesson is clear. The White Lady's survival depends not just on protecting pigment on rock, but on honoring the living cultures she's come to represent. In the end, tourism isn't the enemy, it's how we choose to engage with her mystery that will decide whether she endures as a sacred symbol or fades into a postcard cliché. Not everyone believes the White Lady is an ancient masterpiece. Some insist she's an elaborate hoax, a modern forgery planted to deceive. These skeptics point to Reinhard Maack himself, questioning whether a geologist with no formal training in archaeology could genuinely stumble upon such a unique artwork. They highlight his fascination with European classical art, suggesting he might have fabricated the painting to support his own theories about Mediterranean influence in Africa. Even the timing of his discovery, 1918, when colonial explorers were hungry for sensational finds, raises eyebrows. Could Maack have painted her himself, then staged the discovery to cement his legacy? Scientific analysis of the pigments offers some clarity, but not without controversy. Early tests in the 1970s used rudimentary techniques, scraping tiny samples from the cave wall, an invasive method now banned. Those samples contained kaolin clay, a material used for centuries in the region, but skeptics argue it could have been sourced and applied recently. More advanced, non-destructive scans in 2012 revealed microscopic layers of mineral deposits over the paint, suggesting significant age. Yet critics counter that environmental factors, dust storms, humidity, could accelerate patina formation, making the painting appear older than it is. The debate hinges on a frustrating gray area. While the pigments are consistent with ancient sand materials, they aren't impossible to replicate. Then there's the style itself. The White Lady's fluid, almost Renaissance-like lines stand in stark contrast to other Brandberg art, fueling claims she's too refined to be authentic. Detractors point to her delicate shading and anatomical precision, techniques not seen in verified sand works. But proponents fire back with a compelling rebuttal. Why would a forger choose such an isolated, inaccessible cave? If Maack wanted fame, why not discover her near a well-traveled route? And why has no other figure like her ever surfaced despite a century of searching? The logistics of forging her hauling materials into the ravine, matching ancient techniques under harsh conditions stretch believability. Perhaps the most damning evidence against the hoax theory lies in the faint traces modern technology has uncovered. Hyperspectral imaging reveals brushstrokes buried under layers of natural mineral deposits, a depth impossible to fake without decades of weathering. Even the cracks in the rock face bisect the painting cleanly, proving the pigments predate the stones, fracturing a process that would take centuries. While doubters cling to inconsistencies, the weight of evidence tilts heavily toward authenticity. The White Lady may be enigmatic, but she's no fraud. She's a testament to the unanticipated brilliance of ancient artists, a reminder that the past still holds surprises capable of unsettling our assumptions. Brandberg Mountain's harsh environment may seem like the last place a fragile rock painting could survive for millennia, yet that very brutality might be the reason the White Lady endures. Unlike tropical regions where humidity dissolves pigments or temperate zones where freeze-thaw cycles crack rock faces, Brandberg offers a paradoxical sanctuary. Its desert climate locks the cave in a state of suspended animation. Rainfall here is scarce, with some years passing without a single drop. When rare storms do hit, the cave's overhanging ledge acts like a shield, diverting torrents away from the painting's delicate surface. Even more critical is the mountain's lack of organic decay. Most sand art in greener regions suffers from lichen and algae creeping across the rock, their roots secreting acids that erode pigments over time. But Brandberg's arid air starves such organisms, leaving the White Lady's kaolin clay untouched by biological invaders. The temperature extremes that define this landscape play an unexpected preservation role. Daytime heat bakes the rock face to over 50 degrees Celsius, while nights plunge below freezing. This daily swing creates a microclimate akin to a natural conservation lab. As the rock expands and contracts, tiny pores open and close, allowing trapped moisture to escape rather than accumulate behind the painting, a process that elsewhere causes blistering and flaking. The White Lady's pigments, mixed with a binder likely derived from animal fat, may have benefited from this breathing effect, their molecular structure repeatedly tightened by the temperature shifts like a centuries-long curing process. Wind, typically an art conservator's nightmare, becomes an unlikely ally here. Most ancient paintings in open shelters slowly sandblast away under abrasive gusts, but the White Lady's cave faces southeast, tucked against prevailing winds that scour the opposite side of the ravine. Dust storms that blanket other sites with grime barely graze her sheltered wall. Even the angle of sunlight works in her favor. The cave's orientation ensures direct rays never strike the painting head-on, sparing it the UV radiation that bleaches pigments elsewhere. Instead, she basks in perpetual indirect glow, her details fading so gradually that even 19th century explorers would have seen her much as we do today. Perhaps the most fascinating factor is what's missing: salt. Coastal caves often lose artworks to salt crystallization, where seawater spray seeps into the rock and forms destructive crystals as it evaporates. Brandberg lies hundreds of kilometers inland, its granite walls free from this corrosive cycle. The mountain's geology adds another layer of protection. Unlike sandstone, which weathers quickly, Brandberg's dense igneous rock resists flaking, providing a stable canvas. Even the wall's slight inward curve creates a micro-eddy of air that deflects airborne contaminants. Yet this fragile balance is now at risk. Climate change is altering rainfall patterns in Namibia, bringing uncharacteristic downpours to the desert. In 2019, a freak storm flooded the Tsisab Ravine, sending water cascading perilously close to the cave. Human presence compounds the threat. Each visitor exhales moisture and microbes, subtly altering the hyper-dry conditions that have safeguarded the painting for ages. The White Lady's survival has always been a geological lottery, a perfect storm of conditions that may be unraveling just as we begin to understand them. Her greatest enemy isn't time, but the changing world beyond her rocky sanctuary. While the White Lady commands attention, the smaller figures and animals surrounding her hold their own secrets, clues to understanding her purpose within a larger story. Scattered across the cave walls are faded paintings of antelope, their curved horns rendered in the bold red ochre typical of San art. One particular eland, positioned just to her left, seems to mirror her posture, its head tilted as if engaged in silent communion. Elands were sacred to the San, symbolizing spiritual power and the bridge between worlds. Their presence near the White Lady suggests she might be part of a ritual narrative, perhaps a shaman invoking the animal's strength to cross into the spirit realm. Look closer and you'll spot human figures too, stick like hunters with bows drawn, their bodies angled toward a cluster of fleeing springbok. These scenes are classic San depictions of the hunt, but their proximity to the White Lady raises questions. Is she overseeing the scene, separated from it? A faint red line, almost erased by time, stretches from her feet toward the hunters, as if connecting her to their world. Some researchers interpret this as a thread of power, a visual metaphor for her influence over the hunt's success. Others argue the line is merely a natural crack in the rock, overlaid by coincidence. Then there's the enigmatic figure crouched near her right shoulder, a hybrid creature with human legs and an animal's torso, its arms raised in what could be dance or supplication. Similar figures appear in other San rock art, representing shamans mid-transformation during trance ceremonies. If the White Lady is a spirit guide, this being might depict an initiate under her guidance, caught between human and divine states. The dynamic between them feels intentional, her stillness contrasting with its motion, her pale form glowing against its reddish hue. Most intriguing are the geometric patterns, zigzags and dots clustered near the cave's ceiling. In San cosmology, such designs often represent energy or altered states of consciousness. Their placement above the White Lady could symbolize spiritual ascent, as if the cave wall itself charts a journey from the earthly scenes below to the numinous realm she inhabits. Even the negative space tells a story. The blank rock between figures isn't empty. It's a canvas for the unseen, the breath of wind, the pulse of ritual, the silence between drumbeats. Together, these elements transform the cave from a mere surface into a layered narrative. The White Lady isn't isolated. She's the focal point of a sacred mosaic, each figure and stroke contributing to a story we're only beginning to read. Whether she's a protector, a teacher, or something beyond our understanding, the art around her whispers that her mystery was never meant to stand alone. The White Lady's enigmatic presence hasn't just fascinated scholars, it's ignited the imaginations of modern artists and filmmakers who have reimagined her story through lenses as varied as documentary realism and speculative fiction. Take British filmmaker David Cowlson's haunting 2015 documentary Dancing in the Fire, which frames the painting as the centerpiece of a spiritual journey. Using ultra-high-definition close-ups, the film captures textures invisible to the naked eye, the granularity of the kaolin clay, the faint shadow of a missing pigment layer that once gave her a third dimension. Cowlson interviews Damara elders who speak of her as a living entity, while CGI animations reconstruct how the cave might have looked when the paint was fresh, her white form glowing against torchlit walls. But the film's boldest stroke comes in its final act, where contemporary San artists recreate the White Lady using ancient techniques, their hands mixing ochre and animal fat in a visceral bridge across millennia. Visual artists have taken even greater liberties, transforming her into everything from Afrofuturist icon to climate crisis symbol. South African painter Lesego Siok's The Lady Remembers series repositions her as a time-traveling witness, her ochre robes replaced by flowing solar panels in one canvas, cracked desert earth in another. These works reframe her not as a relic, but as a silent observer of colonialism's scars and environmental collapse. Meanwhile, German digital artist Lutz Pankau's viral White Lady AR experience lets users project her onto any surface through their phones, where she gradually transforms her headdress, morphing into power lines, her sash into plastic waste, forcing viewers to confront modernity's encroachment on sacred spaces. Fiction has embraced her mystery even more fiercely. Namibian novelist Makiwa Mutomba's The Brandberg Prophecy weaves her into a speculative thriller where archaeologists uncover a hidden chamber beneath the cave, revealing a coded map to a lost civilization. The book's cover, featuring a cyberpunk-inspired white lady with neon adornments, sparked debate about cultural appropriation, but also introduced her to a new generation of readers. On screen, the South African horror anthology Tales of the Forgotten dedicates an entire episode to her, reimagining her as a vengeful spirit who punishes looters disturbing sacred sites. The episode's chilling climax, where her painted eyes blink to life, plays with the universal fear of art that refuses to stay static. Even music has claimed her. Experimental composer Thandi Enchili's White Lady Suite blends traditional San Mouthbow melodies with electronic drones, each movement representing a theory about the painting's origin. The album's liner notes include spectral imaging data converted into sheet music, making literal the idea of listening to ancient art. Meanwhile, street murals from Windhoek to Berlin feature her likeness, often spliced with modern symbols. One shows her holding a smartphone, another wears a medical mask during the pandemic, turning her into a mirror of contemporary anxieties. These reinterpretations reveal less about the White Lady herself than about our hunger to project meaning onto the blank canvas of history. Whether as ecological prophet, Afrofuturist icon, or horror villain, she endures because her ambiguity invites reinvention. The original artist left no manifesto, no instructions, just pigment on stone. And in that silence, every generation finds a new voice. The push to secure UNESCO World Heritage status for the White Lady and the broader Brandberg mountain complex is more than bureaucratic paperwork. It's a high-stakes balancing act between global celebration and potential overexposure. Namibia's government first submitted the site for tentative listing in 2020, citing its unparalleled blend of natural grandeur and ancient human expression. The application frames Brandberg as a sacred archive where geology and artistry intertwine across millennia. Proponents argue UNESCO recognition would bring vital resources, international funding for conservation technology, trained specialists to monitor the cave's microclimate, and legal leverage against mining interests eyeing the mountain's mineral-rich slopes. For local communities, the designation promises economic uplift through sustainable tourism, with Damara and Hero guides positioned as primary custodians of their ancestral heritage. Yet skepticism lingers beneath the optimism. UNESCO's strict preservation protocols could transform the White Lady's cave into a tightly controlled zone, barring the very rituals and pilgrimages that sustain her cultural vitality. Similar listings like France's Lascaux caves have become climate-controlled vaults protected but severed from living tradition. Dr. Erenfried Ndilavu, a Namibian archaeologist, warns of museum syndrome, where fixation on physical preservation erodes intangible heritage. The sand didn't paint her to be frozen behind glass, he argues. She was meant to breathe with the mountain. Others fear the UNESCO spotlight could backfire, attracting unsustainable visitor surges despite management plans. Australia's Uluru faced this paradox: sacred sites trampled by tourists even as their global profile rose. The technical hurdles are equally daunting. UNESCO demands exhaustive documentation proving the White Lady's outstanding universal value, a benchmark that invites contentious comparisons. Should she be evaluated alongside other rock art sites like Tanzania's Kondoa, or measured as a singular masterpiece akin to the Sistine Chapel? The Brandberg's harsh environment complicates monitoring requirements. Installing humidity sensors risks altering the cave's delicate equilibrium. Meanwhile, competing narratives about the painting's origins, San creation versus foreign influence, threaten to dilute the unified stewardship plan UNESCO requires. Perhaps the deepest tension lies in defining what protection truly means. For Damara elders like /Nayabeb, UNESCO focus on tangible preservation overlooks a fundamental truth. The White Lady isn't just pigment. She's a voice in our conversations with the ancestors. Some propose a hybrid model, digital replication for global audiences paired with restricted physical access for cultural practitioners. It's a fragile compromise, one that acknowledges both her fragility and her living resonance. As the evaluation continues, one thing becomes clear: the quest for World Heritage status isn't just about safeguarding the past. It's a negotiation over who gets to decide the future of a mystery that belongs, in different ways, to the whole world and to no one. Digital reconstruction projects have peeled back the layers of time, allowing us to glimpse the White Lady as she might have appeared when the paint was fresh. Using hyperspectral imaging, researchers from the University of Heidelberg scanned the cave wall in 2019, capturing light reflections across hundreds of wavelengths invisible to the human eye. This data revealed a startling truth. What we see today is a faded echo of her former brilliance. The original pigments weren't just white, they were layered with subtle hints of yellow ochre around the headdress and faint red mineral streaks along the limbs, suggesting ceremonial body paint or symbolic adornments now lost to erosion. One groundbreaking reconstruction, led by digital archaeologist Dr. Anja Wolf, transformed these spectral signatures into a vibrant 3D model. Her team's software extrapolated pigment decay rates, factoring in Brandberg's unique climate conditions to reverse engineer the painting's likely palette. The result, a white lady who wasn't white at all. Her skin glowed with a warm, cream-colored base. Her sash burned a deep, rusty red, and her headdress shimmered with golden accents that may have represented sunlight or spiritual energy. Even more striking were the ghost details the software resurrected, a necklace of dotted lines across her collarbone and intricate anklets that had completely vanished from the naked eye view. These weren't mere decorations, they matched known San ritual attire, strengthening the shamanic interpretation. But the most haunting discovery came from reflectance transformation imaging, a technique that simulates how light interacted with the original textured brushstrokes. When Wolf's team projected dynamic lighting onto their digital model, the White Lady's posture suddenly made new sense. The raised arm didn't just hold an object, it cast a shadow toward a cluster of now faded handprints on the adjacent wall, suggesting a ritual interaction between the figure and unseen participants. This wasn't a solitary portrait, it was a frozen moment in a larger ceremonial tableau. Critics argue these reconstructions involve educated guesses without knowing the exact binder materials or application techniques. Color projections remain speculative. Yet the technology's value isn't just in accuracy, it's in disruption. Seeing the White Lady awash in color challenges the monochrome assumptions baked into her name and forces us to reconsider everything from her cultural role to her gender. Those golden headdress accents, for instance, align with Damara oral traditions describing a sun queen, while the reconstructed red sash mirrors hero legends of a blood-stained rainmaker. The digital brush doesn't just restore pigment, it reopens conversations erased by time. Now, museums worldwide are integrating these findings into immersive exhibits. At Namibia's National Heritage Center, visitors don augmented reality headsets to watch the White Lady step from the rock, her colors flowing back as ambient and trance music swells. Meanwhile, open-source platforms let researchers layer competing reconstructions, comparing Breuil's Mediterranean noblewoman hypothesis with Wolf's shamanic interpretation side by side. The controversy fuels creativity. Every pixelated revival is a hypothesis in motion, a reminder that some mysteries don't yield single answers, they evolve. What began as technical preservation has become a mirror for our own biases. Each digital rendering reflects not just ancient artistry, but modern priorities, whether emphasizing her African roots or cosmopolitan connections. The White Lady's true colors may remain elusive, but in chasing them, we've uncovered something equally valuable: the kaleidoscope of human imagination, past and present. Archaeologist Sven Oosman has spent decades studying the White Lady, and his work reveals just how much we still don't know about the hands that created her. Kneeling in the cave's dim light with a high-resolution scanner, he points to subtle variations in brushstroke pressure, tiny shifts that hint at multiple sessions, as if the artist returned over days or even weeks to refine their vision. This wasn't dashed off in an afternoon, Oosman explains. Every line carries intention, but whose? The tools used remain speculative. Reeds, feathers, or even fine animal hairs could have produced those precise strokes, yet no remnants have been found nearby. Even the paint's binder, likely egg or plant sap, has degraded beyond identification, leaving us to wonder about recipes passed down through generations and now lost. Oosman's most provocative theory revolves around the artist's cultural identity. While most Brandberg art aligns with sand traditions, the White Lady's uniqueness suggests she might be the work of an outlier, a traveler from distant co-herding communities, or even a member of a now-vanished subgroup with distinct artistic practices. Faint traces of red pigment around her feet, visible only under ultraviolet light, hint at older layers or companion figures painted by different hands. We're likely seeing a palimpsest, Oosman notes. A collaboration across time will never fully untangle, but other experts push back. Archaeologist Dr. John Kinahan argues the painting's sophistication doesn't require external influence. The sand weren't a monolith, he stresses, citing lesser-known sites where individual artists experimented with layered pigments and anatomical detail. A recently discovered panel in Namibia's Erongo Mountains features a similarly slender figure with faded white adornments, suggesting the White Lady may represent a rare but authentic regional style. The debate grows fiercer when addressing the artist's gender. While 19th-century explorers assumed a male hand, Dr. Leila Barham's research on ancient tool use suggests otherwise. Women across hunter-gatherer societies were primary pigment grinders and often the keepers of ritual knowledge, she explains. Microscopic wear patterns on stone palettes found near Brandberg match those created by grinding soft minerals like kaolin, a task predominantly performed by women in sand communities. Could the White Lady be a self-portrait of sorts, or the work of a female shaman depicting her spiritual double? Without direct evidence, these questions linger like pigment particles suspended in cave air. What unites these experts isn't answers, but reverence for the mystery itself. As Oosman puts it, the White Lady's greatest gift is her refusal to be categorized. She challenges us to sit with uncertainty, to acknowledge that some stories in stone were never meant to be fully told. In an age where science often demands definitive conclusions, her enigma endures as a reminder. The past holds its secrets close, and not all brushes with history leave clear fingerprints. The next chapter in unraveling the White Lady's secrets lies not in the past, but in the cutting-edge labs where scientists are preparing to interrogate her pigments at a molecular level. One groundbreaking study on the horizon involves extracting ancient DNA from the paint's organic binders, traces of animal fat or plant sap that once mixed with the kaolin clay. Unlike previous destructive sampling methods, new micro-drilling techniques can collect particles thinner than a human hair, leaving the artwork virtually untouched. These microscopic fragments might hold astonishing clues. Genetic markers could reveal which species supplied the binding materials, offering a carbon-datable timestamp while hinting at ritual practices. If the fat came from a now-extinct antelope species, for instance, it would push her age deeper into antiquity. Even more tantalizing is the possibility of human DNA clinging to the pigments, skin cells or sweat from the artist's hands preserved by the desert's arid embrace. Such a discovery could finally answer whether the painter was San Damara or from a community lost to time. Meanwhile, particle accelerators are entering the fray. At the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility in Grenoble, plans are underway to subject pigment samples to X-ray fluorescence mapping at unprecedented resolutions. This technique can detect trace elements like manganese or zinc down to parts per billion chemical fingerprints that could pinpoint the exact quarry where the kaolin was mined. Comparing these signatures to known geological deposits might reveal trade routes or migrations previously undocumented in southern Africa. Early tests on similarly aged ochres from Botswana have already shown that hunter-gatherers transported pigments over hundreds of kilometers, challenging assumptions about Paleolithic mobility. If the White Lady's materials came from distant sources, it would suggest she was created during a period of extraordinary cultural exchange. But perhaps the most revolutionary tool lies in artificial intelligence. A team at the University of Cape Town is training machine learning algorithms to analyze brushstroke patterns across thousands of documented sand artworks, searching for the artistic equivalent of a fingerprint. Their hypothesis: every painter has subconscious tendencies, the angle at which they end a stroke, the pressure applied to curves, that form a unique signature. By feeding high-resolution scans of the White Lady into this neural network, they hope to find stylistic matches elsewhere in Brandberg or beyond, potentially linking her to other works by the same hand. Preliminary results have flagged surprising parallels with a little-known panel in the Doras Mountains, where a cluster of red figures shares her distinctive tapered fingers and rhythmic linework. These high-tech approaches are complemented by quieter, but no less vital, fieldwork. Ethnographers are conducting painstaking interviews with the last remaining San elders fluent in now endangered dialects, recording oral traditions that might hold fragmented memories of the painting's meaning. In one recent session, a healer named Kumu described a ritual where initiates painted themselves white to walk with ancestors, a practice lost after colonial displacement. While not definitive proof, such accounts weave threads between the scientific and the symbolic, reminding us that the White Lady's truth may reside as much in living memory as in particle beams. The coming years promise something remarkable, a convergence of disciplines where nanotechnology meets archaeology, where artificial intelligence deciphers ancient artistry, and where indigenous knowledge guides laboratory hypotheses. With each new study, the White Lady steps closer to revelation, not as a passive subject of our curiosity, but as an active participant in a dialogue spanning millennia. The answers won't come easily, but that's the nature of all great mysteries. They don't surrender to the first knock, they wait for the right key. After centuries of debate, the White Lady of Brandberg remains an enigma wrapped in pigment, her identity as layered as the strokes that shaped her. Was she a shaman mid-trance, her elongated limbs capturing the moment her spirit left her body? A stranded traveler immortalized by curious locals, her foreign garb misinterpreted across millennia? Or perhaps something more profound, a sacred ancestor, a deity, or even a collective hallucination painted onto stone? The theories pile up like desert sand, each grain a possibility, but none settling into certainty. What makes her so compelling isn't just the mystery of her origins, it's how she defies the very way we categorize art and history. She doesn't fit neatly into the sand symbolic traditions, yet she's too deliberate to be dismissed as an outlier. Her isolation whispers of intentional secrecy, yet her visibility suggests she was meant to be found. Even the science meant to pin her down only deepens the questions. Dating places her anywhere between 2,000 and 20,000 years old, a window so vast it swallows entire civilizations. Pigment analysis reveals techniques ahead of their time, yet no evidence of the culture that might have taught them. Every answer unravels into three new questions. And that's why she endures. In a world where we're accustomed to solving mysteries with a quick search, the White Lady refuses to be Googled into submission. She's a reminder that some stories weren't meant to conclude, that the past guards its secrets jealously, revealing just enough to keep us hungry. Whether you see her as a spiritual guide, a historical accident, or something beyond our modern frameworks, she invites you to lean in and wonder. So now we pass the question to you. What do you see when you look at her? A lost traveler, a divine messenger, a hallucination frozen in time? Drop your theories in the comments, because the best thing about a mystery this old is that everyone gets to write their own ending. And who knows, maybe somewhere in the conversation we'll inch closer to the truth. Or maybe, just maybe, the not knowing is the whole point.